Hello and welcome back everybody to Budget Builds Monthly. It's my monthly video series where I take your budget and I try to build the best computer I can for your needs. Now this time we got something special. Let's see what we have for this month of July. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helped me out. Just a brief reminder on filling out next month's Google form. First off is your budget. Budgets are in USD and do not include taxes, fees, or Windows keys. Next is the type of system you want, whether it be gaming, workstation, or custom. Area of focus. If you want more focused system, just a side note, depending on your budget, the more area of focus you select, the overall budget will be less suitable for certain tasks. So again, if you want a better area of focus on your CPU, better cooling, just select what kind of area of focus you want. Then we have the list of components you already have. Even if you are doing a complete upgrade, that old case, power supply, or even graphics card will save some money in the meantime to put towards other components. No sense in buying two PC cases. If you want any peripherals in your budget. And then lastly, we have any last requests for either the system or this Google form. I'm constantly reviewing this thing and updating the form, so any suggestion helps. And don't forget to fill out this next month's Google form. Links down in the description below. Quick disclaimer, the budget builds will be as close or slightly over the budget due to part availabilities, any sales going on at the time of recording, as well as we are not including OS keys or peripherals unless asked otherwise. Unless we have budgetary constraints, 4 builds will be coming out of this, 2 AMD and 2 Intel, both on the previous and newest generation. This is to ensure flexibility and upgradability to future-proof it. At the end of the video, we will be comparing each system to each other and displaying the pros and cons of each build, so then we can figure out which is the best build for the current price. We had one user respond for the month of July. Their budget is $300 to $600 USD. They want a gaming, streaming, and media storage type of system. Their areas of focus are CPU, memory, storage, and GPU. Now just a quick note here, having a CPU, memory, storage, and GPU area of focus is going to be a little difficult with a $300 to $600 budget, but we're going to see what kind of builds we have and list out the pros and cons later. For peripherals, the user didn't want any, and they had no other responses for this time. Alright, so let's see what kind of systems we're able to build out with the $300 to $600 budget. 3 different builds are going to come out of this. A gaming focused system, a streaming media focused system, and then a balance between the two. To start things off, we're going to start with gaming and our AM4 system. We went with the Ryzen 5 3600. It's a 6-core, 12-thread, 3.6 GHz boost to 4.2. With our motherboard, we went with the Asus Prime B450M. It's a micro ATX AM4 motherboard. Does not come with Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. For RAM, we went with the Ripjaws 5. It's a 16 gig DDR4 3600 CL16. For storage, we went with the Western Digital Black. It's a 1 terabyte PCIe 4.0. It's an NVMe SSD. For our graphics card, we went with the RX 6600. It's an 8 gigabyte. For our case, we went with the Magnum Gear Neo Micro V2. It's a micro ATX case. And our power supply, we went with the Corsair 650M. It's a 80 plus bronze semi-modular power supply. If we spend a little bit more money, we can get an RTX 3060. We're going to be running tests overall to see if it's worth it getting that RTX 3060 or not. Then for the Intel side of things, we went with the i3-10100F. It's a 4-core, 8-thread, 3.6 GHz boost to 4.2. For the motherboard, we went with the ASRock H470M. It's an LG 1200 micro ATX motherboard. And then the memory, storage, video card, case, and power supply are all the same. And then if we spend a little bit more money, bringing us to 636, we get that RTX 3060. Now let's take a look at our CPUs. So just on our CPUs alone, we can see that the Ryzen 5 3600 has a 50% better CPU mark score than the i3-10100. It does have a little bit less on a single thread rating, but overall the Ryzen 5 3600 is the CPU we want to use when it comes to building this gaming PC. Let's run a little bit of test to see if it's worth it getting that RTX 3060 or just stick with that 6600. In my honest opinion, I would not spend more for the RTX 3060, only because the all-in-all performance gain is minimal. So let's take a look at our next build. Okay, now we're taking a look at our streaming media focused PC. For our AM4, we went with the Ryzen 5 5600G. It's a 6-core, 12-thread, 3.9 GHz boost to 4.4. Comes with Ryzen graphics. For our motherboard, we went with the Gigabyte A520i. It's a mini ITX AM4 motherboard with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. For RAM, we went with the Ripjaws 5. It's the 32 gig kit of our DDR4 3600 CL16. For storage, we still have that Western Digital 1TB Iron Wolf NAS. It's a 4TB hard drive from Seagate. For streaming media storage, you're better off getting a hard drive that is built to run for long hours, 24/7, in case the user wants to be running this for longer hours than a standard hard drive would want to. And then we got that same case and power supply as before. Now, if we spend a little bit more money, and we're at $615, this time we have another 4TB, so you can run it in a mirror RAID for redundant storage. For Intel, we own the i5-10400. It's a 6-core, 12-thread, 2.9 GHz boost to 4.3. For our motherboard, we have the Z590i. It's a mini ITX LJ1200 from Gigabyte. And if we go ahead and add one more drive to this build, we can see that the price goes to $636 rather than that $566 we had before. Again, not saying that these builds need 2 drives. It's better for redundant storage. So the i5-10400 versus the Ryzen 5 5600, both have 6-core 12 threads, both use 65 watts, both have integrated graphics, but we can see that the Ryzen 5 5600G is actually better CPU than our i5-10400. So if you're going to build one of these systems for media streaming, go for that Ryzen 5 5600G. Either remove that storage for the hard drive and then get a graphics card sometime down the line when you have more money, or just get 2 drives from Seagate and then you have a media oriented device that can handle gaming but will run tests. Let's see the systems that we can build to blend the 2 systems together and have a balance. For our CPU, we're with the Ryzen 5 3600. That's the same CPU we used in our gaming system, along with the same motherboard. This time for memory, we went with the LPX 32 gig kit from Corsair. It's DDR4 3600, but it's CL18. For storage, we went with the 240 gigabyte SATA SSD from Kingston, but we were still able to keep those 2 4TB NAS drives from Seagate. For our graphics card, we went with the RX 580. I found an RX 580 for sale on eBay for $80 USD. So if you just do a quick eBay search, we can see that we get an RX 580 for $80. This one's $70, $90. This one's on bid, ends in a few days. So you can get an RX 580 for $70 to $80 USD. I would just keep searching through eBay, maybe your local Facebook marketplace, Kijiji, Letgo. Pretty much just keep looking around, see if you can get a graphics card that's even better, or just another RX 580 for $80 USD. Now back to the video. And then for our case and power supply is all the same, sitting right around a nice little neat budget of almost $600 flat, because we had that promo going on with that mail-in rebate. For our Intel side of things, we went with the i3-10100F. It's also that same CPU we used in our Intel gaming system. And the ASRock H470M. It's the same motherboard we used in our gaming system. Again, that same 32 gig kit we just saw. Same storage, case, power supply, and video card. And this total is sitting right around $584 USD. So let's take a look at all of our CPUs and compare them to see which one of them is actually worth buying in the end. So we have the Ryzen 5 3600 and the i3-10100F. Now these 2 CPUs we used in our gaming system and are balanced, while the Ryzen 5 5600G and the i5-10400 we used in our more streaming oriented systems since they did come with integrated graphics. Right off the bat, we can see that our two Intel chips are actually worse off than our Ryzen chips, so let's just remove those. So all in all, for our previous gen, we can see that the Ryzen 5 3600 with the RX 580 is our very well built balanced build. But it's pretty much all the user's choice of which one of these three builds they want to use. So the good news is we still have the next gen platform to take a look at. So let's take a look at our DDR5 platform and see what kind of systems we have. So that we've finished all the previous gen, let's take a look at our current. But for gaming, we went with the Ryzen 5 7600. It's a 6-core, 12-thread, 3.8 GHz boost to 5.1. For our motherboard, we went with the Gigabyte A620M. It's a micro ATX AM5 motherboard. For our memory, we went with the Patriot Viper Black. It's a 16 gig kit DDR5 5200 CL36. For storage, we went with the Crucial P3. It's a 508 gigabyte PCIe 3.0x4 NVMe SSD. For our graphics card, we went with that RX 580, same case and power supply as before, and we're sitting right around 586. For our Intel, we went with the i3 12100F. It's a quad-core 8-thread, same CPU as we used in the other build. This time we went with the H610M. It's a micro ATX LGA 1700 from Gigabyte. Same memory and storage, case and power supply as our previous AM5 build. But for our graphics card, we were able to get the RX 6600. And all in all, we are sitting at right around 590 USD. So I don't really like using user benchmark for running these tests, but it's the only software that could actually get these numbers and test the parts against each other. So to change things up a little bit, this time we went with the balanced build. First we have the i3 12100F, same CPU that we just saw, same motherboard, memory, and storage. This time we were able to fit two Iron Wolf NAS. Went with that RX 580 again, and the same case and power supply. If we go ahead and drop one of these drives, we can drop it down to 540. There were no balanced builds for AM5. I tried everything decent, but it kept going over budget. And lastly, we have our builds that are streaming focused. So for our AM5, again, we have the Ryzen 5 7600, that same A620M motherboard, same RAM, same overall storage. We were only able to get one 4TB NAS drive, and same case and power supply, sitting right around 580 USD. For Intel this time, we have the i5 12400. It's a 6-core, 12-thread, 2.5 boosting to 4.4 with Ultra HD 730, and then that same H610M as our previous Intel build, and the same pretty much overall memory, storage, case, and power supply. And then for power supply, this time we went with the 450 watt power supply. Because this is only an integrated graphics build, it's perfectly fine. But if you at any point you wanted to upgrade it, you would have to upgrade your power supply. So I would still spend a little bit more and get that 650 watt power supply as we can see here. Or again, you can just drop one of the NAS drives and just be the exact same build as our Ryzen 5 7600. We're going to run one last set of tests to see which of the systems, new or old, to build that fits the user's criteria. And for straight up CPU testing, we can see that the Ryzen 5 7600 versus the i3 13100, i5 12400, and the i3 12100F. Our 12100F, the worst CPU of them all, with our Ryzen 5 7600 in first place. As for that $300 budget, you're gonna have to go on like again eBay, Kijiji, Facebook Marketplace, and try to find a system for under $100. So here's all the recently sold listings on eBay. So a lot of these systems are only going to be really like DDR3 for this pricing, which is why I would suggest looking at your local marketplace, because DDR3, maybe DDR4 if you're lucky. So like, let's pick this one for an example. A lot of these towers you can see are selling around $300. So all you have to do is then just throw in another 2 drives, brand new drives, or a graphics card. So again, a lot of these are just going to be DDR3, have everything you want for that. And then you have something like this system that ends in 3 days, has a Ryzen 9 3900X, an RTX 2080, 16 gigabytes of RAM. So again, my suggestion is look on eBay, look at your local marketplace, Letgo, Kijiji, anything that you can see if a user is selling a system. Maybe you'll be able to work out some sort of deal with them, but then you'll hit your budget of, let's say, $300 just on the system. And if it's something like this where you can get a gaming system, all you really have to do is then just buy your storage. And if you already spent $300 on a system that's this spec'd out, that's perfect. Again, everything's going to be DDR3 for under 100 US. All in all, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And user, I hope that we built the right system for you. Shoot us a message down in the description below. If y'all enjoyed this one, don't forget to fill out that Google form. See you all in the next one.